Hi everyone, and welcome to the Book Refuge, and welcome to one of the funnest videos to make, the books that I hated this year, or the worst books of 2019 for me. So this is always fun because I don't have a ton of these. I usually DNF a book if I'm not into it. I made that a rule at the beginning of 2019 that I would DNF more books. So I don't usually get too far into a book, and therefore I don't really count it in any of these. But there are a few books that I either finished because they were the end of a series, or I was buddy reading them with someone, or I just ended up hate reading them because I wanted it to be over. So let's go through. I don't have a ton. I only have I think 7 books on this list, but I do have some honorable mentions that were DNFs for me. So I'm going to start with those and just go really quickly. I'll just say a sentence or so about it. So I DNF'd The Antidote. I was trying to do a video at one point in this year, which was to read the lowest rated books on my Goodreads, but I just didn't have any desire to continue them. So The Antidote, it was just a weird setup. I'm not going to go into a ton about it. But I didn't finish that one. I got 100 page in and called it kaput. Hidden Bodies by Carolyn Kepnes. I got about 100 pages into this. This is a sequel to You, and I hate Joe, and I didn't want to spend time with him. This one was a first-person point of view with Joe, and he just gets away with too much, and I wasn't having fun watching a serial killer, because that's what he is, because once you've killed more than 3 people, get away with everything, and I hated it. So I moved on from that one. Name of the Wind, which I'm sad I didn't continue, but also not, because a bunch of my friends really hated the second one. This is by Patrick Rothfuss, and this gets put on so many best lists, and I just can't stand it. I was so bored. The author thought he was too smart. Well, not him. I'm not saying that about the author. He made a character who the character thinks that he's so smart and constantly tells us how smart he is, and then is annoying, and I didn't enjoy it, so I stopped that one as well. Stalking Jack the Ripper by Carrie Maniscalco. I only got about 40 pages into this, and I called it kaput. I hated being in the head of that character. She was so pretentious. She was such a know-it-all, and I just thought she was bitchy and didn't want to spend time with her. So that one lasted about, 40 pages, and we cut it. Once Upon a Dream, which is still over there. That one is by Liz Braswell. I'm so sad, but it was just boring and dragging on, and I didn't like what was happening, and Aurora wasn't interesting, and so I pushed on because this was a pick by my viewers. You guys picked this one. We were buddy reading it, and one of you who finished it really liked it, but then everyone else was just kind of nonplussed by it. They weren't that into it, and so I just let it go. I just didn't have the time for it. And then finally, Hungry by H.A. Swain. This was one of the first books you guys picked for me when I started doing the choose from my haul, and it had such a fantastic premise. It was a dystopian world where people don't need to eat anymore. You get these vitamin infusions, and then you don't need to eat. And there are some people who still believe that we should eat food, and they're thrown in prison or killed because they eat food. And then it was a standalone, and it wasn't going anywhere good, and so I just kind of cut it and skipped ahead to look at the end, and no, we weren't going to be friends, so I had to say goodbye to that one. So let's get into the books that I actively hated. So starting with Echo North by Joanna Reese Myers. And most of these I don't own anymore because I got rid of them. I get rid of a book if I hated it or didn't like it. So Echo North by Joanna Reese Myers. I had such high expectations for this book, which was my first mistake. This was a retelling of East of the Sun and West of the Moon. In fact, the author even says in her acknowledgments that she was inspired by East by Edith Piatot. Now, 2 points for y'all if you know what my favorite book of all time is. East by Edith Piatot. So I was very excited. I was so pumped. And I hated it. I hated a lot of the changes. There was this weird house in the mountains that was slowly falling apart, and you were supposed to stitch it back together. And then it has there's some spoilers for this book. There's some time loop things going on, and I'm rarely a fan of time loops, and I hated it. And I read that one. I finished it and I hated it, and I gave it 2 stars, and I've told everyone, I was like, please don't read this, especially if you love East. Maybe if you don't love East, you'd be okay. But however, I really like Joanna's writing, how she writes. Like the beginning was very, like, pulled me in, and I like that. I just didn't like my favorite story being messed with that way, especially when she says she was inspired by it. And then the way that she took some things, it didn't make sense to me, and I hated it. So, but she has a new book coming out called like Beyond the Darkened Shore, and I really want to try that one since it's not ripping off, you know, my favorite. All right, next we have Oof, The Stone Sky by N.K. Jemisin. So this is hard for me because the first one is on my favorites of 2019 list. But The Stone Sky, I read this so bad. I buddy read all 3 of these books with Murphy. I have annotated editions by her, and I just want to get rid of all of them because I hate it, and I'm not going to reread this. And I think the author thought they were too clever, and the things she did to her characters, I won't forgive. And there's so much abuse of children, and there's so much just like, I don't understand this world. I don't know what the ending purpose of it was. And it breaks my heart because I loved the first book. And if you want to hear me rant about that, how I love it, it will be in my favorites book of the year. But I just hated this, and there's no more than I can say. Murphy really thought it was okay, but I mean, for all of us, I feel that the first one is the strongest in this series. But it just made me really sad. It made me sad that I didn't love it, because I wish I would have stopped after the first one now, because the second one went downhill a little more for me, and then this one I was just like, what am I reading? So that was sad. Next is The Raft by S.A. Bowden. So this one, I actually really like survival stories. I like I Am Still Alive. I like Hatchet. I like wilderness stories where people have to rely on, you know, their own smarts and fighting against the elements to make it through. And this one is what I thought this would be. This girl gets stuck on a raft with a, is he the pilot? I think it's the pilot, and they get stuck on this raft together and have to try to survive until they get rescued. And it was a really short book, and so I kind of plowed through it because it looked interesting to me, but it just didn't go anywhere for me, and I really hated one of the tropes that it used, and the ending kind of undid a lot of the character growth we went through, in my opinion, and I just didn't like it. So I don't have actively hated opinions about this one, but I feel like it was a waste of my time, and if it hadn't have been so short, I probably wouldn't have kept going with that one. Next was a truly disappointing one, and that was The Wolves of Winter by Terrell Johnson. This was a post-apocalyptic set in the wilderness. It's in Alaska. It is We're the Final Survivors kind of story. There was a plague that went through and killed most everyone except this woman and her mother, her uncle, her uncle's adopted son, her brother, and then there's like one more person is all that's left. And then one day a man and his dog come through, and our main character is a woman and this man is younger-ish. And so it's really her like only hope of an interaction with someone, and that's kind of how it's played. But there's also still a government conspiracy mixed in with there, and there's some like snow pirates who try to take them for what they have, and it was just weird. And this book was just over 200 pages, and it had so much going on in it, and it's a standalone. And there was so much that was setting up another book, and then it just ended. And I hated it. I hated it a lot. And it made me mad because it had so much potential. But there's this part in the middle where our character gets kidnapped by some people, and we find out all this information about like her father and the virus that had come and all these things, and then it's just nothing happens with it. So I was very disappointed. But this author is a debut author, and maybe he'll decide to write another one, because it really was left open, but there's nothing else. I would give him another try, because there was parts that were compelling. It's just how he told his story that got to me. So, Next, Queen of Ruin by Tracy Banghart. And this was really disappointing to me because I really liked Grace and Fury. This story is about these two sisters who one of them is going to become a Grace, which means she is one of the superior's wives, basically, is like a concubine to him, will provide him with heirs, and they do whatever he wants. Their life is for his pleasure. This is in a world where women aren't allowed to read, women are second-class citizens, yada yada, you've heard it before. But I really like the first one, because one of the sister who's supposed to become a Grace, she gets exiled for having a book. So they think she knows how to read. It really belonged to her younger sister, who is there in the capital with her. And so now her sister becomes the Grace in her place, and her sister gets sent to an island where women who disobey go to die. But they don't go there to die. They go there to compete in gladiator-typed fights with each other for the pleasure of the guards on this island. So, interesting setup. Fantastic. Start the second book, which is Queen of Ruin. Very exciting. I'm enjoying it. Until I, number one, found out that this is only a duology, and number two, that the way the author wraps it up is another case of, oh, well, everything's just going to be fine. You know, the lies this country has been telling about women for all this time is just, we're going to get over it. It's going to be fine. Our new prince, our new superior, he's going to marry and just have one wife. No big deal. We're going to actually make this girl basically the queen. Everyone will accept it. Like, it was just, you set up people's hard views on women, and then you're just like, one man and one woman are going to change all of it. And I just don't know what's happening. So it's really sad, because I was enjoying how like brutal this story was. It was a smart concept. I thought it was amazing that it was like it was all a lie. And then they just ended it, and we're like, it's going to be fine. It's going to be great. And I'm like, what? No, we needed a third book. You always have to have a book where you explain what's going on. Like, I don't know. I can't, guys. I can't. Last two, I'll be quick because I have full rant reviews for both of them. First, Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. I have a full rant review for this one. Lots of snark, lots of fun. I hated this book. I gave it 1 star. And I love that I did, because I hated it, and I hate the people, and I hate how they act, and I hate everything, and it's a loop of hate, and children are abused, and animals are abused, and people hit each other, and I hate it. And I've heard people say that's for a purpose. I believe it could be for a purpose, but I read for enjoyment. I'm not reading this to be taught something. And that's my opinion, and I hated this book. And I read this with my friend who needed to read it for class, and I hated the people, and I think they all got what they deserved, except for the children. I feel bad for the children in this story, and I don't care. Yep, I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. And then the last book, and this one isn't a hate. This is an extreme disappointment, broke my heart. I'm just like I have all the feelings, and that is for Dark Dawn by J. Kristoff, which I also have a full rant review and discussion in more depth about what I disliked and where I felt that I was let down and misled. I love J. Kristoff. I've read every series except his Lotus War, which I'm kind of saving. Because I haven't been in the mood for it yet, but I want to read that too. And this just like didn't do it for me. But it also did, which is the problem, because I was so excited to pick this up and I took so many notes while I was reading it, and I loved some of the new characters and I loved some of the action sequences. There was a lot of deaths. These notes are like deaths and significant moments, and then these are like quotes that I liked. But one character specifically gets done very dirty. Not in a sexual way, but like it's and Jay can say all he wants that like I never promise you happy endings for these characters, but I just it's hard. Go watch the video. I can't explain it in any other way. But I'm disappointed, and there was some things set up that I feel like couldn't be followed through. I feel like he was more self-referential than normal. Like some things that were set up in Nevernight, like it just got like out of control, the self-referentialism, until it went a little Twilight Zone-y, and I didn't like that. But I still will keep this series. It is still close to my heart. I look forward to rereading Nevernight soon. I want to do that soon. But yeah, it was hard for me. And so that's why it's on my worst list / disappointments, because I can't recommend it to people, but as well, it's the third book in a series. I had to read it, and I'm so disappointed. So these are all the books that I hated or were a disappointment to me in 2019. How did you feel? Were some of these your favorites? Let's have a debate. I don't mind at all. This is all in good fun. Every reader has their own taste. I hold none of this against you. Please don't hold it against me. And I make new videos every Monday, Thursday, and Saturday, and you can see some more of them right now. Bye.